Good morning.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Happy Monday.
Today we're talking about new construction and your role, and we're seeing lots of questions on different issues that people are having right now working with builders. And really we're going to talk about what can you do, how can you help your buyer, and then where are areas where, it's not our job or our role to help someone. So almost a whose role is it?
Almost a whose
back
role.
And forth.
But a little bit longer of a session, so perfect for a Monday morning conversation here.
Definitely.
So first I want to start with just a couple basic things because I think there's some really good education points before we even get into the role. So let's just start with how does a typical new construction transaction even transpire? And most of the time, well, there's 4 different scenarios that I came up with. There may be a few more, but we'll talk about just the 4 briefly. So you may have a buyer that calls you up, a past client or a buyer referral, and they say, hey, I was driving out at Sterling Ranch in Littleton. There's a Lennar community out there that we really, really like. I went online, looked at the floor plans. I think it's going to fit. Can you represent us? Absolutely. You may have the buyer that you sit down with during your buyer consultation and they say, we're open to new construction and we're open to resale. Can you educate us on both? You may have a third buyer that says, I don't want resale, I only want new construction. Can you help me determine what communities might be best? And the fourth buyer may say, we went in and we visited a sales office and they recommended that we have a realtor and we told them that we do have one, and so we decided to call you. So those are kind of the different scenarios and how the real estate new construction transaction can transpire. Now, are you guys doing buyer presentations and consultations with your clients the very first time you get together and going through a buyer packet and saying, hey, you might be interested in new construction, and if so, this is the process? We are really seeing builders crack down on representing or accompanying your buyer on the very first visit. I don't know how many equity agents we had last year not get paid a commission because the buyer went, well...
I was tapping the microphone. Audio, yeah. We make lots of noises over here.
We had several equity agents that did not get paid a commission because their buyer went into the sales office, selected a lot, selected a floor plan, then called their agent and said, hey, I want to have you review the contract. The agent called the builder and said, this is my client. And the builder said, you didn't come in and register them. You didn't attend on the first meeting, and therefore we're not paying you. So
that hurts.
It hurts a lot, especially when you've been showing houses to that buyer for 6 months and writing offers on resale, and then you just lose out. It doesn't matter that you have a buyer agency agreement with them. The builders are very specific. You must attend in person on the very first meeting. So during your consultation with your buyer, please let them know that.
And I think we'll make a buyer consultation one of these Monday morning topics, because I think too many people aren't doing that with their clients. Because if you are, and they actually went to the new build without you, and you didn't get paid from them, you could go after your own client if you properly filled out your buyer agency with them and you explained to them that they must use you. That's for another topic, though.
Yeah. So let's just say that your buyer's done everything right. They asked you to help them find a new construction community that's going to meet their needs. You found one. And so the first step is going to be call up the sales associate out at that community and let them know that you're going to be coming in. Some are doing appointment only. You don't want to catch them when they're writing a contract with another client and then not be able to get the information that you need. So give them a call, introduce yourself, and say, do you have time to walk us through the community, give us some information and answer some questions. And then load up your buyer and meet them out there at the community. Usually what you're going to want to do is they're going to give you an information packet that kind of talks about the different lots, the community features, the different floor plans, interior and exterior inclusions, and things of that nature. If you've never worked with the builder before, I recommend you ask for a copy of a blank purchase contract. They don't use Colorado Commission approved forms. Each builder has their own contract that's been drafted by their attorneys. The reason for that?
They're looking out for the best interest of the builder.
Yeah.
And that's 100% legal. I mean, any seller could do that if they wanted to. Okay, sellers represent themselves or their best interest, obviously. Buyers are looking out for their best interests. So there's nothing wrong, unethical, illegal, and we're not attorneys. So if you're starting to read that and you're getting confused about, wow, I'm not really sure what my buyer's rights are, what they're not, refer that off to an attorney and have your buyer get an attorney if they're concerned about some of the legalese in that, because we are not attorneys and we can't advise them on a contract that's not our contract.
Yeah, exactly. So as you guys know, Colorado Commission approved contract is written in favor of the buyer, and that's why the builders have their own contracts drafted, because they're written in favor of the builder. So in that initial visit, really what your role is to help with communication and making sure that the buyer's questions are answered. So to have the sales associate go through, what does the process look like if the buyer wants to do a dirt start? Do they have any inventory homes that maybe are coming up that will be completed shortly or are already done and maybe fell out of escrow with another buyer? So just kind of asking and facilitating conversations on what does the next step look like if the buyer does want to move forward with the purchase process. So making sure that the buyer knows all of those things. So really you're just there to help with questions and facilitate conversation in that initial meeting. So if the buyer decides that they want to pursue an offer on a property and say there's a lot that's available, you don't have to enter a lottery or anything like that, then it's a matter of scheduling an appointment to come in and actually review that contract with the sales associate. Sometimes they'll have time to do it that very first visit, but sometimes the buyer wants to go home and think about it. So to have the sales associate put the contract together ahead of time is usually helpful, because that can take 45 minutes to an hour to draft, and you guys don't need to sit there for that. But I do recommend, and it is your role, to be present during the contract signing process. So you don't want to just send your buyer in and say, hey, go sign the contract with the sales associate. You physically want to be there. The main reason I would say that's important, in my experience, is sometimes those sales associates pull out the paper and say, sign here, sign here, sign here. And you want to stop them at that point and say, no, please take the time to go through every single page, all the different sections, and explain this to the buyer. There's a lot of different paragraphs in that contract that the builder can have a tendency to want to gloss over. The ones that I found are the special taxing district paragraph. And oftentimes it's good to stop them and ask the sales associate, is this property in a special taxing district? Because that's going to change what the taxes look like for the buyer. Maybe there aren't HOA fees, but the taxes could be property taxes. Annual property taxes could be a little more expensive than what they're anticipating. So that's a good section. The other section that's coming up, and it's been in the contract for quite a while, this is not a pandemic thing, is in the event that a particular material that the buyer has selected at the design center isn't available at the time of construction, the builder has the opportunity to switch that product out with something of similar color, style, and type. So make sure the buyer knows that.
And that can be a big one.
That can be a huge one.
We've seen, I wanted maple cabinets and everything, and that wasn't available, and so what we're swapping it is oak.
What? Those are two different products.
Yeah. So you definitely want to look into that. And again, if your buyer has major concerns about the wording, they're not going to change it for you. I mean, this is the builder's contract, and we're in a seller's market. So they're dictating it, but that doesn't mean your buyer has to buy the house.
Right.
There are other builders, there's other homes. So this is up to your buyer to decide, how open-ended do I feel comfortable being with some of these paragraphs and what they may or may not have the right to do. That is a buyer's decision, and you don't want to over scare your buyer into not buying a home. If this is their end goal, is that location, is the square footage, all that, and maybe they're going to end up with, instead of Frigidaire, they're going to end up with a Kenwood or something like that. I mean, they're going to have a different type of appliance. Is that going to be a deal killer? These are things that you definitely want to have a good discussion with your buyer
Yeah.
about.
And, you know, it's all about setting expectations. So letting them know that these are things that could come up. We don't anticipate it. But that way, if 3 weeks before closing and they're walking through their home going, why do I have Kenmore appliances when I picked out Frigidaire? It's not this big, or it's like, remember we talked about that. Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. So that's one thing. The big one that we've seen recently with the pandemic, due to the supply chain issues and material costs going up significantly, is some builders are putting clauses in the contracts that state if prices on supplies or materials go up by X amount, that's going to be charged back to the buyer. So the buyer may think that they're buying a $578,000 home, and if those material costs go up X amount, they may be not stuck, but they may find out that their home is now a $602,000 home. So making sure that that clause is not in a contract, and if it is in the contract, that the buyer fully understands what that means and that they are prepared to either qualify for that amount or have the extra cash, because that could really significantly affect the purchase.
Yeah, that's a big one. I mean, is there a cap on how much they could end up charging? What if this does throw the financing off? Do I get my earnest money back? I mean, there's lots of questions go along with that. At what point does the buyer actually have a right to say, that doesn't work for me? Do they have a right or not? And again, we're not attorneys. So, you know, I feel bad when agents ask me, what do you think? I can't read their contract and tell you what their intent is. You know, that's their intent. An attorney is someone you're going to want to refer that contract to with the buyer's attorney, so that if the buyer's attorney says, I'm comfortable with this, and we get down the road and there's an issue, that attorney is able to back up why he felt comfortable in getting that buyer's either the earnest money back or canceling the transaction or whatever they need to do. So again, this is not upon you. It's not upon you to get an attorney. This is not call the legal hotline. The legal hotline is not there to help the buyers understand contracts. The legal hotline is to help us understand our own contracts, but not someone else's contract.
Exactly. So be mindful of these different clauses. Make sure you keep an eagle eye out for them. That way you can give the buyer the right advice of, hey, I think it might be worthy of hiring a real estate attorney to help you with the pros and cons of this contract before you sign it. So that is part of your role and responsibility, is to look out for the buyer's best interest. And remind the buyers, you know, in the initial buyer presentation that if they do have interest in new construction, the price of the home is not less without you. So if they don't bring you, they pay the same amount and they don't get representation. So make sure you really hammer home how many different pitfalls there are in new construction and why you want to be an advocate for them. So this just happens to be one of those.
I want to throw it, and don't feel that you're not doing your job by asking someone to go get an attorney. Okay, there are, again, roles. We're never attorneys. Okay, we read our own contracts and tell you what our own contract says. And there's even issues with our own Colorado State approved forms where our opinion, we're not sure, and you refer it to an attorney. So don't feel like you're shirking your responsibility by saying, hey, Mr. Buyer, you should probably have an attorney review this because you have these questions that I am not capable of answering that are out of my realm, and I want you to be protected. Again, that's your role. If you weren't there and you didn't see some of these or highlight some of these things that they might be concerned about, they may never have gone to an attorney and gone down the whole road and then found out that they were in a contract that they didn't want to be in or didn't understand something. So don't feel like it's moving the button.
Devaluing your role whatsoever.
No, that is part of your value to go, I think you need some expert advice before you move forward because you have some significant questions about what you're ready to sign.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you what this means.
Yeah, exactly. Good point. So let's just say there's kind of two roads or two ways this can diverge from here. If the builder has an inventory home that the buyer is going to contract on, that means it's already constructed. It's got the certificate of occupancy, the punch list has been done, it's ready to go. So then you just follow the normal transition of a regular resale home inspection, financing, appraisal, closing. If it's a dirt start and the buyer selected their lot, they write the offer, There's not a lot of negotiating going on right now. So if your buyer is looking for you to get a lower price on the house, just tell them that's not going to happen. One thing you can try to do is sometimes the builders will be offering incentives. Sometimes you can ask a builder. Typically, a builder wants to keep the community prices at a certain level, and that's why they don't make reductions in price. So you can oftentimes get them to throw little things in. Maybe there's an upgraded paint color that the buyer wants. You might be able to negotiate that in, or they want a slightly different light fixture or an extra electrical thing for their stereo. Sometimes you can get little things like that negotiated in on the front side, but price, a big refrigerator, washer, dryer, window coverings, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, as you know, that is what sets precedent for a market analysis. So it's even in a slower market, it's the last thing a builder ever wants to do is change the price, because they need that price for the entire community.
yeah, and that's good. It upholds the value, so that's actually a positive thing for the buyer. So once the buyer's under contract, then where do we go? So typically the next step is going to be the buyer going to the design studio. And I say the buyer going to the design studio. Again, the builder and the sales associate are going to keep you copied on all email correspondence. And that's very, very important. So you want to know when these appointment periods are so that you can touch base with your buyer. Don't forget, you've got design center. Once you go, it's usually a two-step process. They inundate them with all the information on upgrades and options, let them go home, think about things, and then they come in and actually make their selections. So you may have a buyer approach you and say, you know, these are kind of my options. I want to make sure that I'm thinking about resale. Could you help me in determining whether I should do this or I should do that? And so they may actually ask you for your opinion on those types of things. A buyer that wants to paint their walls green, probably not great for resale, but a buyer that wants to upgrade from laminate counters in the kitchen to granite counters, give them 2 thumbs up. So those kinds of things you can be involved in, but you do not need to sit through the 2.5-hour design studio appointment while they pick out every little intricate detail of the home. So next is when you break ground. So then there's going to be a lot of milestones throughout the building process, and the buyer and the construction superintendent are going to be like this. So there are only a couple of appointments that I would recommend you go on. There are several site visits throughout the construction process. The buyer can go out to the home anytime they want, as long as they make an appointment. They have to wear a hard hat. You do not have to attend every single site visit the buyer wants to make. Now, there are a couple intricate parts of the building process where there will be plumbing inspections and drywall inspections, electrical inspections, and there may be a couple of those that your buyer says, I'd really like you to be there as a second set of eyes and a second set of ears, because there's so much information coming at them. If you go out to any of these site visits, I recommend you bring your phone and you take pictures while you're there. Instead of just standing around doing nothing, take pictures, because oftentimes between framing and electrical and plumbing and drywall, things will get covered up and you'll be like, wasn't there a light switch there? Wasn't there? And so there's little ways that you can be super helpful by going back through your photos and saying, oh, there was this, or oh, they accidentally covered up that, or oh, there wasn't supposed to be a door here. So yeah, that's a helpful thing. But don't go to all the site visits. Otherwise, it's going to be a full-time job.
You're not building the house.
Yeah, exactly. So as we get closer to completion, then there's going to be the opportunity for the buyer to do a home inspection, which on new construction, we highly, highly recommend a home inspection.
Always.
Always.
Always. Yeah. Do not rely on the city or the county when they come out and inspect. All those inspectors have their own little things they like to look for.
Yeah.
But there's things that they overlook, and they're human. So having an inspector, I remember this when I first got in the industry, and I thought it wasn't that important. And after closing, we found out that the entire subfloor had gotten wet. Ooh. And all the insulation had gotten wet, and it was a disaster. Of course, the builder took care of it. We fixed it and everything, but we could have caught that immediately by having an inspection. So, I learned that the hard way 30 years ago, and
I've seen furnaces that weren't ducted correctly for clients of mine that were buying. I've seen carbon monoxide leaks. I've seen sewer lines. Do a sewer scope.
I was just going to say
that's
that.
A big
Even
one.
do a sewer. We had a sewer scope done when we were the builder, but of course we're contracting contractors, and we had it scoped, and one of the guys that was doing the backfill had ran over, and it had put a major crimp in it. So sewer scope, regular, treat it like any other property, because things do go awry.
Yeah. So after the home inspection, the next thing that you want to be part of is going to be, it's typically called a punch list walkthrough. And that's where you walk through with the construction manager and you take blue painter's tape and you mark every imperfection throughout every single room of the home. So if a contractor has dented a hardwood floor, or there's a chip in the tile, or there's, an imperfection in a cabinet, you go through with the buyer and mark every single thing. And oftentimes the buyer's looking for certain things and you may catch something else. So it's a very thorough inspection. It's usually an hour and a half to 2 hours long, but that's one you want to be part of. And then the new home orientation would be the next item that you would want to be part of. And that's basically making sure that all the punch list items have been taken care of, and then walking the superintendent walks the buyer through how to use their furnace and their air conditioner and, the different mechanicals in the home. That's not as important for you to walk side by side and shadow. You can bring your laptop, sit in the kitchen, but making sure that all those punch list items prior to closing have been done, that's really important. And most of the time you then get to be the squeaky wheel, because 99% of the time everything is not done. And there's a couple things you have to bark about in order to get them to finish those before closing. Now, not everything happens before closing, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, we've seen several posts from you guys lately of builders not having the home done.
Yeah.
I mean, multiple things with the house that are not complete, and you get your buyer all excited, and you're thinking you're getting a brand new turnkey, ready to go, move in. I've got no issues, other than maybe something will come up 3 or 4 months down the road that you've noticed in the house. But you walk up to the house and you see that you don't even have your doorbell working, or your
exterior
fixtures. Lights, or
maybe the mirrors are missing in the bathrooms. You know what? As long as the city or county gives the certificate of occupancy, the buyer is obligated to close on the property and will be in default if they don't.
If they get their CO, certificate of occupancy,
it means the home is safe and habitable.
Yep.
Doesn't mean the home's complete, but the home is safe and habitable. And the builder has up to an entire year to make sure that the buyer is happy with the property. Usually if you're this close to closing and it's missing a few things, it's just because of construction delays, and they'll get it taken care of pretty quickly. But the buyer needs to know not everything's always going to be perfect, and they unfortunately do have to move forward with closing. They cannot say, oh, let's bump closing 2 weeks.
So that's setting expectations. Talk about this ahead of time so that they know. I'd say most people are pushing because they want to move in.
Yeah.
They want to get in.
Yeah.
I want in. And if you delay a CO because I don't have the light switch on the front done, or the doorbell, or some small thing, and that's slowing down someone moving in, they're just as upset. So it's either you want to move in quickly and it's okay with not everything being perfect, or I want everything perfect before I move in. Set the expectations up front of what could occur. And if you need to know yourself, what are those things that have to be done? Go down to the county, go down to the city of where you're at, and find out what's it take to get a CO.
Yeah, and they'll give you a list of everything that has to be checked off for that.
And that's a great education tool for you to understand in your own municipality of what's required, what's not required. What's the 1-year warranty? All builders have to offer a 1-year warranty. But what does that cover? And that can change in the municipality that you're in. They might have different coverages that they want the builder to take care of within that 1 year. Go find out what those are so that, again, you can be knowledgeable and help educate your buyer that these are things that have to be covered. They will cover them, and you have the right to, as Stacey was saying, bark a little bit and get these things done. Versus, they don't have to do that. There are things that they don't have to take care of.
Yeah, and I think you can one of your roles as a real estate agent is just helping calm the nervousness of your buyer. And oftentimes you can make them feel a little bit better by saying, the builder has the intention of getting all of this done. And their reputation is on the line. So they're going to do it. And you have your 90-day period, your first 90 days in the home, where you literally make a list of every little thing you find that needs to be attended to. And then you have your 6 month, and then you have your 1 year. And so the builder is going to come in after that 90 days and make sure that this is done, and this is done, and this is done. And then your 6 month. So nothing has to be perfect at closing, because you do have these other periods of time in which they will be addressing those items. So, that's always reassuring for a buyer to know the builder's not just taking my money and then walking away. Yeah. There's other checks and balances in there.
So we can understand.
Yes.
Empathize.
Yes.
And then let them know the reality and how we'll take care of it. And how the builder will take care of it.
Exactly. So, again, you're here to be the liaison between the buyer and the builder. You're not here to solve all the problems, but if there is an issue, you're going to want to jump on it and make sure that you're reaching out to the right people to help that buyer feel as comfortable and confident in their purchase as possible. Obviously, closing is a great celebration. You hope that everything's done, but if not, you can be there to help follow up even after the closing process to make sure that these small little details are taken care of in the end. And that's pretty much your role in the new construction process.
Which is substantial.
It is.
So, again, we'll end up doing a buyer consultation for you guys. And what does that mean? And every single client you ever work with, you should have a buyer consultation. And it should only take a half hour. And that's, at the end of that consultation is where you sign your agency. Not your relationship a day before you write an offer, but when you start the whole home buying process, and they should have this laid out.
Begin to work together. Let's sign an agreement.
So we will do that here in the coming months.
Yeah. And again, I just want to hammer home again, make sure that you attend that very first sales visit.
It's a must.
Because, the other thing that I'm noticing, you're going to have to sign a registration form that has your buyer's contact information and then puts you as their realtor. Check those registration forms, because some of the builders are expiring them out after 60 or 90 days. So if your buyer comes in and then they don't contract on something and you register them and then they come back in 6 months later, that registration might be expired and you have to fill out a new one. So that's kind of another catchy one that just popped up last year.
Yeah.
They didn't used to expire,
no.
but they do now. So keep an eye out for that as well.
What questions? We got a minute or two for questions. Allison had a question that was on Facebook, and we need to call you, Allison, to find out a little more information on this. You had mentioned something about a builder wanted a $9,000 earnest money prior to the contract being completely reviewed. Now, what I'm missing on this is, has anything been signed? So anyone at any time, never give money without having signed something. Is this a deposit?
Yeah.
Is it an earnest money? How do I get it back? What is that $9,000 and what's it going for? And how do I get it back? Are the two main things. So if it's part of a contract, obviously that's going to be built in there. If it's a deposit for new construction, it's got to state what is this and how do I get it back? So
I've definitely heard of buyers having to put down, $500 deposit in order to get into a lottery, and that's money that's fully refundable if they decide not to choose a lot or they don't win in the lottery. I've never had someone tender an earnest money to a builder prior to executing a contract. Typically, earnest money doesn't get tendered until after the buyer and the builder have signed that agreement together. So that seems a little out of the norm to me. Again, we'll reach out to you, Allison, to get more background information. But yeah, it doesn't quite seem correct.
Yeah. The easy answer is no. Unless there's a contract that's been signed.
Yeah, maybe you've already signed a preliminary tentative and now we're moving it to the full.
There must be something that says what this is and how do I get it back.
Yeah.
And not just, if you will, a blank check. We'll find out more information on that. And we'll get the answer reposted onto Facebook. Yeah. Because I know people are looking at that. I'm just going to take a quick look here, see if we have any questions. Good morning, everyone. Lots of good mornings. even Vicky Hofer, who's in Maui.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for joining
thanks,
us while you're on vacation.
Aloha.
We appreciate you.
And Stephanie and Scott, Terry Cooper says, with the buyer due diligence, Doc, we have buyer's sign. We are more protected from buyers looking at us to point fingers with anything that goes wrong during the build process. Well, yeah, I mean, we're not responsible for the building, and whether it's new construction or any contract, there are certain things that we're responsible for, and there are certain things that a buyer's responsible for. And our main duties are always to help guide and inform and make sure that the buyer understands what they should be doing and what their roles are. If they're concerned about the school districts, they go look at the school districts. If they're concerned about what's in the CO and when can I move in, because I might be nervous that they get a CO before all the safety things are taken care of, well, they can go find out at the municipality what's it required to get a CO. So
Yeah, and don't forget, all of your duties that apply in residential resale transactions also apply in new construction. So confirming your buyers received a copy of the HOA documents and informing them that it's very important that they review those, and then following back up, did you review those documents and do you have any concerns? I mean, we do that with resale all the time. Did you get the due diligence? Did you get the title commitment? Did you review the title commitment? So make sure that you're following all of those major milestones and making sure the buyer not only received the documents they were supposed to, but they actually looked at them.
Yeah, that they actually looked at them. That's a good one.
Yeah. And then again, reminding them of make sure you call and get your property insurance set up. Make sure you get your utilities set up. I mean, all of that stuff applies to new construction as well.
Just want to say good morning to Vicky and good morning to Karina and several other people have jumped in, so it's good to see you.
If there's any other questions that you have, hopefully this helps a little bit with what do I do and what do I not do. Don't go to Design Studio if you took anything away from this. But yeah, hopefully that helps, and hopefully
we get to see a bunch of you next week.
Yeah.
So again, next Monday.
Yep.
ACU mandatory update, free at Smedra. Do not have to be a Smedra member to have this free for you.
I think that's it. And then we'll see you 2 weeks from today with another Monday Morning with the Schusters on January 31st.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Have a great day. Thanks so much for joining us.
Great seeing you. Well, kind of seeing you.
We know
we'll
you're
see
there.
you next week.
All right. Bye, guys.